CATL is the world's largest EV battery manufacturer from China, and it has revealed plans to build a new battery plant in a place called Zaragoza in Spain, really well placed. This is a joint venture with Stellantis, actually, involving a substantial investment of 4.1 billion euros. So the plant is expected to have an annual production capacity of up to 50 gigawatt hours, which could power approximately 700,000 electric vehicles, which is about an average of 71.5 kilowatt hours per vehicle, in case you were wondering. So that's enough to cover about half of the cars that were produced in Europe last year. So it's a monstrous move. Choosing Zaragoza as the site for this plant is strategic. It's a very clever place to put a plant for batteries. Spain is Europe's second largest car producer, and this location offers proximity to several of Stellantis' manufacturing facilities. This move not only strengthens CATL's presence in Europe, but it also supports Stellantis' goal of producing more affordable electric vehicles for the European market. One other thing is that they are able to produce massive amounts of electricity, obviously, because it's Spain. There's a lot of solar energy or irradiant energy they can harvest from the sky, basically. So in 2024, almost 2 million electric vehicles, full electric vehicles, were registered in all of Europe, and the UK actually registered the most of any one country at almost 400,000 full electric vehicles. Out of the 2 million electric vehicles sold locally in Europe, about 1.5 million were produced locally in Europe, and about 1 million were made in Germany. 275,000 were made in the UK out of the 400 that were sold there. Hello everybody, my name is Ben Alexander. Thank you for joining me. This is The Charge Show. I talk about the latest EV news from around the world, and today we're talking about CATL's announcement that they're going to Europe, basically, again. And this move could significantly impact the electric vehicle landscape across the continent. So let's break down what exactly this means for Europe and the industry. The construction and operation of this plant are anticipated to create a lot of jobs. That's a big part of it, obviously, well over 1,000 jobs. Obviously, the company profits a lot and takes a lot of that money abroad, so that's not great. But actually, let's remember this is a 50-50 split with Stellantis, so it's not all a Chinese company. The Zaragoza plant will focus on producing lithium iron phosphate batteries, almost entirely actually, known for their safety and longevity and cost effectiveness. It's not as energy dense yet as NMC chemistry, but people want LFP chemistry. It is definitely a thing. Most people just want LFP chemistry, so that's why they're focusing on that. One of the reasons anyway. This new facility adds to CATL's expanding footprint in Europe. The company already has a plant in Germany that's operating already, and has another under construction in Hungary, which I think I've mentioned a couple of times already. CATL supplied 38% of the globe's batteries last year in 2024, and they produced around a quarter, roughly, of Europe's batteries last year, and they're aiming to make well over half of Europe's batteries by the end of next year. So by boosting local battery production, the availability of EVs is likely to improve, potentially accelerating adoption rates. I'm not convinced that it will lower the prices much, if they do at all, but they say that it will, and it does theoretically avoid tariffs. So it is possible theoretically, but I reckon someone's just going to get a big dividend or a pay rise or something like that, a big bonus. But diversifying production locations enhances supply chain stability, reduces risks associated with geopolitical tensions or shipping disruptions. Obviously, this is a big deal for a couple of reasons, and it also could mean that certain companies or governments could garner more control or persuasive power. So CATL's new battery plant in Spain represents a significant step forward for the European EV industry, basically. It's a move that promises to enhance local manufacturing capabilities, which we desperately need, and it supports economic growth and accelerates the transition to more sustainable transportation. There are lots of things that are really hard to quantify. The collateral from transitioning to EVs, for example, like electric cars will last longer. They genuinely do last longer, and there's less to fail on in an EU control, or in the safety check that you have to have every couple of years, for example. Statistically, that is proven. They do pass more often, they will last longer. Rather than buying the electricity to fuel them and giving that money abroad to, say, a foreign company that sells the oil, you can buy electricity that's produced locally using wind, for example, or solar farming, things like that. There are lots of things going on in this transition that's very hard to quantify, so it's really hard for anybody to be an authority on these numbers when they put it together. But it is a big deal. So maybe the company CATL goes to Europe. Half of that deal is owned by CATL. They make they make the batteries. They put them in the cars. Maybe some of that money does go abroad, but we retain the money that we would have otherwise paid on petrol and diesel. That was talked about by a professor of an American university when he was talking about the European transition to electric vehicles. He didn't say much by way of numbers, but he did talk about that a little bit. And that is definitely something to touch upon in the future when more sort of research papers and things like that have been done. So it's easy to see this particular thing here as China taking over another market. The reality is, I think, a bit more nuanced. In my humble opinion, European car makers have had well over a decade, to scale up battery production and create their own battery ecosystem, but they just haven't, not effectively anyway. But outside of a few exceptions like the ACC joint venture, which and also Northvolt's early promises, we've seen basically not very much at all, an underwhelming follow through. So Northvolt has been delayed multiple times and has struggled to reach mass production levels before filing for bankruptcy twice, once in America, once in Sweden. So while CATL already produced over 339 gigawatt hours of battery capacity globally in 2024, up from 258, I think the number is, in 2023. That's, by the way, that's a 31.5% increase in just 1 year. So the logic, I think, is clear. If you're Stellantis, you're a business, you want to make money because you've got staff to pay. And I'm not talking about the $6 per car that goes to the CEO. But if you're Stellantis and you want to deliver millions of EVs to meet 2030 emissions targets, then you don't wait around for a European supplier to catch up. You partner with a company that already dominates the Chinese supply chain, the global supply chain as well, and is also very proven at scale. Now, to give you a sense of the scale, we're talking about 50 gigawatt hours, a 50 gigawatt hour plant like the one being planned in Zaragoza. That could support 10% of Europe's current EV battery needs based on 2024 figures. If Europe uses around 500 gigawatt hours per year by 2030, which is a commonly projected figure, then this plant alone covers a tenth of that in 5 years' time from just one site, which is an amazing thing. And don't remember, they've already got factories in Germany and in Hungary. They're building one there too, which is going to be another 100 gigawatt hours when they bring that. And add that all together, CATL might be producing upwards of 150 or 160 gigawatt hours annually of European batteries that we consume basically on European soil, which is an amazing thing. So some people raise a few concerns, a couple I won't go into, but they do raise concerns about the reliance on foreign-owned battery makers, and that's fair. But it is worth noting that CATL's European operations are deeply integrated with local partners. The Zaragoza plant, for example, in Spain, 50-50 joint venture with Stellantis, like I said. That means that profits and tech development and local job benefits aren't just flowing back straight to China. There's a shared interest in growth as well. So that would represent thousands of jobs, obviously. So there's also the solar angle as well, which I mentioned earlier. Spain has abundant sunshine. Stellantis has said that this site will draw heavily on renewable energy. That's not just good PR, in my opinion. It actually lowers the carbon intensity of battery production in Europe, which is a big deal when it comes to life cycle emissions of electric vehicles. And European regulators are already moving toward carbon intensity scoring for EVs and their components. So producing locally with renewables could become a competitive advantage. You've got to also remember as well the European Union wanting to bring about the battery passport effectively. So looking at the weight of it, what's in it, where do those things come from, and tracing that right back to source. And also, let's not forget logistics as well. So right now, if you get a battery cell and it's made in China, it might travel 10,000 kilometers by ship before reaching a European assembly line. So that is time, money, and emissions that manufacturers are keen to avoid by producing cells in Spain. And CATL and Stellantis cut out a massive chunk of that logistical burden and at the same time insulate themselves from things like shipping costs or shipping disruptions or geopolitical tensions. And of course, as we all know, the European Union, which seems hell-bent on taxing anything that produces carbon or anything that comes from China, that would bypass that effectively. So to wrap all this up, yes, CATL's arrival in Spain is a big move. It is definitely a positive. And yes, it's another example of China's dominance in battery tech. But for European car makers like Stellantis, it's also a chance to catch up, localize, and secure a more stable, scalable supply of batteries as they transition to fully electric lineups. So the big question going forward, I believe, is how will European battery startups and automakers respond? Will they step up production? Will they form new partnerships, or will they just fall further behind? Let me know what you think in the comments. I know that you often have good things to say about the battery videos that I make because it is very interesting. Will this new CATL factory help accelerate the transition in Europe, or will it just increase dependence on Chinese suppliers? Thank you very much again for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing, maybe join as a channel member if you want as well. I think it's only a couple of dollars a month. And you're very welcome to put any questions below in the comments. I will read them, I will reply to them. So thank you very much. I appreciate your time as well. I definitely don't take that for granted. I really do appreciate it.